Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 1st, 2021 Residency Liaison meeting. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll go ahead and get started. As well, one last reminder, please mute your microphones and your telephones. And if you're on your telephone, please don't put us on hold. We do have a few items that we want to cover this morning, and glad to have our RDS and SEAA people with us on the line. And so we'll go ahead and get started. I think that I'd like to start with some of the questions that we received via the online form. As you know, we send out the request for questions and agenda items because we think this is very helpful in making sure that this meeting remains valuable for everybody. Also want to make sure everybody is aware that we are recording this session today, and we'll send out the recording and the slide deck to everybody as soon as we have it all prepared. So basically the question is, and this one Gene and I had a nice little conversation about, the question basically is, does the when there's a dependent, active duty military dependent, does the dependent have to actually live in the same house as the active military member or service member? And so we kind of dug into this a little bit on this question, and I put in the answer box here the actual legislation that governs this answer. And so first I'd like to highlight kind of the yellow sections, and that is there's a definition of what the word abode means and abiding, and it's the place where the person actually lives. So upon first reading, if you look in paragraph C here, it seems very clear that the armed forces, the dependent should be abiding in the state, the same state, or in North Carolina, excuse me, and should abode in the abode of that of the service member. So at first reading, you're thinking like, yes, they have to live in the same house. And I think generally speaking, that is the case. The person does need to live in the same house. However, there could be occasions where there's a temporary. So it's interesting that the definition allows for a temporary abode as well as a permanent abode. So let's say, for example, that there's a marital separation between the service member and the dependent. Well, if that's just a temporary separation and they are working towards reconciliation, then you might be able to consider that as temporary. And then there's also the idea of continuous enrollment, is if the service member was transferred to another state, but then the active duty military person is staying in this North Carolina, and they're not necessarily living in the same abode. However, it's a temporary situation because the service member was TDY or PCS someplace, or something was going on that is kind of a temporary situation. So there is some professional judgment here that the residency liaison is going to have to make at the local level. However, in general, yes, the two should be living in the same house. And I don't know if Gene has anything that he'd like to add to that.
I think just quickly, JW, is that, when someone has that out-in determination, they're not going to lose it when there's a change in circumstances. Okay, so if in this case, let's say they were living together, if the spouse gets transferred out of state, okay, the service member gets transferred out of state, but the other person stays behind. Once they're enrolled and continuously enroll in the same program, they can keep the out-in. The other thing is, I would say that even this is where this gets complicated, but these are the issues RDS deals with every day. If it's active duty, they would be coming through RDS. Okay, so if they've had a change in circumstances, we'll look at it, and we'll look at the factors involved. If they were separated years ago before, or if the person was a resident here to begin with, there can be other provisions. So yes, in general, they have to be sharing, but there's a lot of other factors that RDS weighs in doing these active duty determinations.
All right, thank you, Gene. I appreciate that. Remember that you do have the access to the college line to RDS. So when you do have questions and need to discuss it with RDS specifically, please don't hesitate to use that campus line to talk to the RDS staff, or if you have to, email Jean or Tracy. I didn't see any questions about this or follow-up or clarification questions about this question in the chat box. So I think we'll go ahead and move forward to the next slide. And basically, we got two questions that were from two different individuals about the same question. But I wanted to make sure I did actually capture that we received that question twice. So that's why on slide 4, for those of you following along on the telephone, that you see that it just refers to the previous slide. So this question takes several slides. And this question we don't currently have an answer for because our new general counsel wants to research it a little more to make sure she's giving a solid answer. The question basically is can you copy a military ID card or not? And so our person who posed the question provided several different perspectives and references to the law, and seems to think her perspective is that it is permissible to copy the military ID. However, we are awaiting a final answer from our friends in legal here in the system office, and our general counsel is doing that research as we speak. I'll pause here just for a second to see if there's any questions in the chat box. Okay, not seeing any in the chat box, so we will go ahead and move forward. The next question is about the RCN, and I talked with Tracy from RDS, and she helped provide this answer. If a student has RCN has provided in-state status due to active duty military, but the RCN is nearing expiration and the student is now retired, will the student need to resubmit their residency so that they can be coded properly? According to Tracy at RDS, if you think the student or the student thinks that they now are a resident without the active duty military exemption, then definitely go ahead and go through RDS again to get a new determination, because with that new determination, they may qualify then for state grants and other type of things like that. So yes, it would be good. If not, and they're going to remain continuously enrolled, then it's better just to let things continue to ride, because then continuous enrollment will handle that process, and they will continue to be eligible to be charged the in-state rate because of their continuous enrollment in the same program. I did want to make a side note there that says that colleges still should process your local continuous enrollment workflow because the state level one does not necessarily cover all of the local exemptions that we have. So you want to make sure you continue to do your local continuous enrollment, and then the global or the statewide continuous enrollment will assist if a student moves from one college to another college. However, if there's an exemption at college A and then they move to college B, then they will not have, they will have to apply or resubmit whatever paperwork that college B requires to receive that exemption, because it doesn't follow you from sister school to sister school, as I'm sure each of you know. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions about that, or to see if Tracy or Jean has anything that they would like to add. Okay, not seeing any questions or hearing anything, so we'll go on to the next question here. So now we're dealing with one of the exemptions with lawfully admitted immigrants. And so the question is, can a person who has just filed a petition and was lawfully admitted into the United States, do they have to wait for the filing to be approved, and then what documentation is required and so forth? So the answer there, you can see the reference is in general statute, and you can see very clearly in the general statute that it just says that the petition has to be filed. It does not say that the petition has to be approved. The appropriate petitions, the person did list there in the question area, which is the I-130, the 360, and the 140. You would need to, as far as documentation is concerned for this exemption, is you would need to have evidence that the person has been in North Carolina for 12 months, because that's part of the statute. And then you would have to have a copy that the petition has been submitted. I'll pause there to see if Gene has anything that he would like to add. Also to see if maybe there's any follow-up questions in the chat box.
Yeah, JW, I want to clarify on this one because the language gets very tricky. This is a petition for immigrant status, meaning a green card holder. So RDS will accept the paperwork before they get the card as long as it's been approved. This petition allows for that. Now, it gives 3 forms. There's another one in the new campus book. I'll talk about that, or guidebook. But yeah, if they have that, this allows them to have that they filed for it, but it hasn't been awarded. But this would not cover anyone who's petitioning for a non-immigrant visa status. So petitioning for a visa or asking for asylum. Those are the larger numbers. This would be a narrow window that someone applies and they're waiting to hear. So just to clarify that, now those other folks may be eligible under the other provision for high school graduates, okay? But this one specifically, and I spelled it out more in the documents just released, pertains to someone applying specifically for a green card. Okay, so it's not any kind of immigration application.
Thank you, Gene, for that clarification. I appreciate it. And thanks for mentioning the guidebook. We're glad that that's come to fruition. And I'm sure you're going to talk about that more in a few minutes. So thank you. Let's see, I've got a question here from Central Piedmont. Do we also need proof of lawful admission along with the forms? Gene, I'll kind of pitch that one to you. I think if you have the petition, then you were lawfully admitted, but that may or may not be true. I'll pause there.
I would say the majority of the time, yes, but it's possible someone can be doing this remotely. It could be a dependent, and they might not physically be here. They may not have been admitted yet. It is possible, for example, if part of the family moves here, you get the parents with a green card, maybe some of the family remain in another country. So generally, you're probably going to need that other piece to show admission. And again, the new manual will show you all that in the campus guide. But yeah, 90-some% of the time, you shouldn't get a lot of these because, as I say, if it's family based, then they should go pretty quickly and within a few months or something. So, but if, yeah, they should have some sort of admission because it's theoretically possible. I've seen it happen where someone applies to get this and the person's not even here yet. They haven't been admitted.
Okay, thank you, Gene. And I'll make a note to update the slides to indicate that that the lawfully admission is some evidence that we would need that as well as part of this documentation. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah, or at least presence, JW, because I mean, you can have a green card but not necessarily be in North Carolina. You still have to have evidence of that. But I guess it's reasonable to assume if they've been here 12 months and this petition has been filed that they are probably okay. But to me, if it was at our end, I would look for just the evidence of admission to be, sure about that.
Okay, we have another follow-up question. What if you have an F1 visa student applying for their green card? I think that is an example where this might apply. Would you concur?
Yes, it would. That would be very, very unusual. Typically, you can't go from an F1 to a green card. I'm not, and I want to say typically. I mean, there's a lot of roadblocks against that, but it's not impossible. I think we'd look to see, was there some other status? But I mean, if they had an F1, they were lawfully admitted. So
That's right.
if they, you know, we would have to look at that. But typically, immigration doesn't permit you to jump through that. It has happened in rare cases. But I would look at that as you were lawfully admitted. If you had a visa, whether or not it's one we take, like F1, you were lawfully admitted.
Right.
So then that's evidence of that, and then you just need the petition. And I
Okay.
know some of these get really, really complicated. When you have one like that, you know, just give a call. We'll try to sort it out with you.
All right. Thanks, Gene. I appreciate that. And then should there be an end date to the student type? The legislation doesn't indicate any end date. However, I think it is the responsibility of the campus to continue to check on a regular basis whether a decision has been made about the petition. Because if the petition was denied at some point, then of course this application would not, this exemption would not apply. Would you concur with that, Gene, or do you have thoughts?
Yeah, since it's a community college campus discretion, I would say yes. I think that's up to you. Good judgment. Certainly, if you see evidence or there appears to be evidence that it wasn't granted, it's not something that the turnaround is a day or a week, but certainly within a year or so. But I think that's your call because it's really a campus-based exception in terms of, you know, just a follow-up to that.
So it sounds like a good practice might be to check it annually. Okay. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Gene, and thank you, everybody. I think at this point, we'll go ahead and see if Tracy's on the line to see if she has any updates for us. Tracy, do you have any updates for us?
Yeah, JW, sorry I didn't send it to you. I think I sent you the yearly stats. And so if you want, you can send that to everyone after the meeting. I wanted to then, yeah, it's pretty consistent with our quarterly stats showing a 9% decrease in total students using RDS over this year. And the next thing I wanted to mention was just a couple of things that went in releases over this past quarter. One thing we tried to do is minimize the number of students that have problems logging in because they've created a profile in the past and then they forgot about it, and so they create a new one when they get ready to do RDS. So we did a couple of things to help with that so they can retrieve their original username. And we also started asking them to re-enter their social security number when they begin RDS, because we have, you know, so many people that put the social security number in incorrect in their profile. And then that leads to problems, you know, with matching and with state grants and other things. So we've done that. We also tweaked the parent question because some students were getting confused that don't live with their parents, but they're dependent on their parents. So we just tweaked that question a little bit so it can accommodate more situations. What else? Yep, that's just about it. So those are the two main things we did that you would see. Also wanted to mention that I've talked to Gene, and he is going to do a training course with our staff to go over the new guidebook and go over some of these sort of more tricky scenarios to make sure everybody is up to date and knows the right answers. So that's about it from my side, JW.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Appreciate that. And appreciate the work that you guys do there, especially on the help desk. I know you guys get lots of phone calls, especially coming up on fall registration like you did this year. So thanks for that support.
Thank you. That time of year.
Yes. All right, so thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. And everybody in the audience, I'll update that blank slide for the RDS staff updates to put the bullets here about what she talked about when we send out the new slide deck. So now, pitch the mic to Gene. What you got for us, Gene?
Hello there. So just quickly, what's still pending legislatively? As we've gone through this season, I've updated everybody on the changes. They're summarized. I'll talk about it in a second with the release of the guidebook. But there's still 3 things we're watching. One of them, JW, I know you'll talk a little bit more about, is the Senate bill. It passed the Senate and the House. It's gone to governor for signature, allowing for another high school exception for community colleges for 1 year after their graduation. I'll let him talk about that. So we're expecting that literally any day. Part of the holdup in the last few weeks for the guidebook is I kept waiting because there's 2 or 3 things still pending, but we just felt we couldn't wait anymore. So I did note in the guidebook and campus guide that these are provisionally on the table. So when you see that, we just have to verify. So that one is awaiting the governor's signature. It literally should be any day, I would think. There are 2 other things that we're looking at that are in the appropriations bill, which I think it looks like it's going to be, 2-3 more weeks at least. And one of them is it pertains to a UNC exception about certain athletic scholarships. And the other one, it's not residency per se, but it would be a tuition waiver once you verify continued North Carolina residency through RDS. And there's a provision for providing for tuition waivers for graduates of the North Carolina School of Science and Math. So those are still provisional, but I did flag them in there. So some other stuff has already been signed into law. We've talked about the changes to the Veterans Choice Act was signed recently into a session law, just reaffirming in North Carolina law what the federal law says. We already talked about the provision for active duty where the students in high school gets admitted and during their senior year, the service member leaves. They can keep that as long as they enroll by fall. So a few other things like that we've talked about. So in the new edition of the guidebook and the campus responsibility guide, so they've gone out. Please share them on your campus as appropriate. The guidebook is a public document. It's on our public website. The campus manual really is not for public consumption. It's really for campuses. So the RDS guidebook, I also appended to it a 2-page bullet point of what the changes were. Most of them you're already aware of. Some of it was more formatting or just clarification language. The immigration section was reworked with minor changes, but basically it was like here are all these documents. Do you have these documents for this? It's been organized into immigration class. So if you're a permanent resident or applying for it, or an asylee or refugee or visa holder, it organizes it by category and then tells you what the requirements are. There were slight changes to the visa list. There were a couple more that I found that are eligible, and there's a couple that are no longer eligible, and one was discontinued by immigration. However, none of them, I don't think we've ever seen one person. They're kind of rare visas, so there shouldn't be huge changes. Those petition forms we mentioned a while earlier, 130, whatever, 140, 360, there's another one of 526 is now eligible. So a few minor changes, but it's summarized in that 2-page document that went out with the new guidebook. The campus guide, I really expanded this greatly to include more tools at your fingertips. So when some of these questions that come up about, what do we look for? What's our role? There's contact information for everyone in there. There's the category codes and explains the difference. But it also, up front in it, there's I hope, a clearer explanation about when is RDS responsible for collecting documents, or when might a campus be? And basically it's when you do something at a campus basis that's different from what RDS did. So like military active duty, green cards, all of that, RDS collects up front. So that spells that out. And under each of the exceptions, for example, the ones we talked about for the ones petitioning for permanent resident immigrant status, it walks you through, here are, or the public school graduates that are non-citizens, here are examples of the types of documents to look for to show that they were lawfully admitted. And it gives you several choices. You just need one, or here's what you look for in these cases. So hopefully that will be user-friendly and helpful. If not, or there's something else we need to include, let me know, and we'll look at that in future additions. And finally, we're going to have updates on this. And Monty Hickman's going to send something out. We're looking at having a training to go through specifically that campus guide, as well as a review of basics if you have any new staff. So 2 separate sessions. We'll have them later toward the end of the month as people get past the initial crunch of add drop, census date, and all of that. And that will be available online. That'll go out to everyone, and then we can answer questions. But the campus guide, I'm hoping, is much more of a reference and user-friendly doc, and we'll go through all the campus-based stuff of what you have to do and when you have to track and how to make those decisions. And then finally, I just want to talk about SCA appeals, and that's last fiscal year, we had 17 students come to SCA, and I think all but 2 were students who came here from out of state to attend a 4-year. Okay, that's the norm. This last quarter, we had 0. It's picking up now with start of a new term, and again, so far, they've all been students from out of state that they've been here for a year and don't understand why they can't get in state, but meanwhile, they have no income, and the parents are sending a check every month. Is the most typical scenario. Once in a while, we'll have someone again questioning about why can't I get in as DACA or things like that where there's a legal provision. But in the scheme of things, we don't get that many students coming up to SEAA. So that's end of my report.
All right, thanks, Gene. Any questions for Gene before we move on to the system office section of our presentation today? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the chat box, Gene, but we might get some at the end. So thanks for staying on for a little bit, and appreciate the work SEAA does to help us figure out and help us stay in compliance, I guess is the best way to say it. We do have a couple of other updates for you guys before we get to any questions that you might have, and these are from the system office. And Gene alluded to this one, and that's the Senate Bill 421, and it has been ratified by the General Assembly. This is different than the current public high school graduate exemption. The current public high school graduate exemption is basically for immigrants. And so that's what that one's for. This one is specifically for U.S. citizens. You've got the link here for the bill if you want to go look at it. However, it's not official yet because the governor has not signed it. However, our expectation is that the governor will sign it. We're not aware of any concerns from the governor's office. And so we've already begun working with the BSAs and with the finance division to develop a student type that will be specific for this exemption. And so we're working on that as we speak. So hopefully as soon as the governor signs, we'll be able to send out a workflow document that'll talk about and update the student types document that will include a student type specifically for this one. One thing I do want to warn everybody about as you working colleague is to make sure you distinguish between the two student types. Because we expect that there might be some research that'll be done in the future on student types and how they're used and how many times students benefit from the student types, which specifically relate to residency exemptions. So we want to make sure we have an accurate use of the student types, and it could easily get confused between the public high school graduate student type and then the new student type that we're going to get with this one. So just want to kind of have you a little warning there about that. That's all we have, and we'll pause there to see if anybody has any specific questions for us, and either in the chat box or if you want to unmute your microphones or your telephones and ask us any questions you might have.
JW, I just want everyone to know that I did send out the invite for the trainings that Gene will be doing in September. Those just went out, and that's going to be on the 15th and the 22nd of September.
Excellent. So the 15th and the 22nd of September, is that what you said, Monty?
Yes, sir.
Do you have times for those as well?
For the 15th is going to be 2 o'clock to 3:30. And on the 22nd is going to be 10 o'clock to 11:30.
Okay, excellent. So you should
out to the
I'm sorry,
residency
go ahead,
and I'm sorry, I sent it out to the residency group and the admissions group, just so they know.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And thank you, Gene and Monty, for conducting and coordinating that training. We appreciate it. Any other questions? So we have a question there, Gene, about where the guides are available. And so could you talk about that a little bit? I believe they're on your all's website, and then one of them's in a login place for a website, if I remember correctly.
Right. I sent them out to everyone on the list, but I guess, and asked them to pass them on there. I just sent you another copy. But the RDS guidebook is on the public website, ncresidency.org. And then at the bottom, there's that campus secure area where the campus guide is. Okay. If you have a problem, email, call, something, we'll get it to you. But they did go out in a blast to the colleges.
Okay, if we hold on just a second, I will try to bring that up and we can walk it through real quick if you don't mind. That might be worth sharing with the entire group. So can you walk me through it there, Gene?
Okay, so if you go up to what to know at the top, all right, if you look down there, you're going to see the different options you have, and you're going to go to the last one. Right, and there you have links to the relevant laws, to the guidebook, and if you click on that, you'll have a PDF you can download.
Okay, excellent. And
Okay.
then to the other one?
Yeah, the campus one, if you go to the bottom, see where it says, the link says school administrators, down there. And that is password protected, which, by the way, I put in the new campus guide because I get a lot of questions about it. And I have to look this up because mine's saved. Just a second here. And there's just the one, so everybody has access. That's not unique to the individual. And it is, one second here because I don't have it memorized. Here we go.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Gene. I apologize.
Okay, it's okay. Capital R, capital D, lowercase s, capital A.
What's the username? Is it RDS admin?
Yes, with the S is lowercase, and the rest of that looks okay. Okay, and then password is capital R, E, $, IDENCY.
IDENCY.
Right.
And we'll show that. Did I do both of those correct?
It looks correct.
Okay. So we'll give that a second so people, if anybody needs to write that down, you have time to write that down. But there's the username and the password for this area of the website.
And in the new campus guide, you'll see all the contact information and that information there again. So if you printed a copy of that or save an electronic copy, you'll have it there.
And then
Okay. If you go to all, should be there.
with resources, yeah,
Yeah, Artie's got a campus manual.
right,
Second one,
right there.
right there.
Okay, so we hope that helped a little bit, everybody. I have found that it's this is a great resource to be able to jump on this page to pull some of these things up, and also to have a quick access to the laws is very helpful for me as well. Just kind of as a refresher of what's going on and how to make a decision. So, and so Sarah, did you catch that password? Let's see, let's put that in the chat box. If you guys can help me remember, that was R, capital R-E, and then I think it was $.
Correct.
Is it residence or residency?
Residency.
Got it. All right. Hey, thank you, Gwen, for saving me from myself. I appreciate that. So we've got that now in the chat box for you as well. And if anybody forgets, email me, Gene, or Tracy, or even Monty. He might be able to help, right, Monty?
Maybe.
All right, friends.
Gwen.
Gwen, there you go. All right, friends. Any other questions? If you want to unmute your microphones or telephones or put in the chat box.
One last comment. I know we have had turnover in the system recently. So when we don't know everyone personally, not everyone. So if you know of someone at any school who has changed their residency person, please send an email and let us know so we can add them to the list or make sure they're part of this phone call or the trainings.
Yeah, thank you, Monty. That's an excellent point. And one thing Gene and Monty and I discussed earlier was that there's also a kind of a basic residency overview type of training that we'll probably conduct on an annual basis. We have done it recently, Gene, if I remember correctly, you reminded me. So we'll probably plan that again maybe in the next, within the next year. So if there's any brand new people, we can do kind of the basic training as well.
Actually, JW, that's the first of those 2 sessions that Monty scheduled. Is the
excellent.
basic. And then the second one is to go through the campus responsibility. Whoever at your campus will deal with looking at the exceptions, coding them in colleague and so forth, collecting the documents. First one's general, that one's more specific.
Excellent. Thank you, Gene. I appreciate that clarification. So the first one is kind of a basic overview training, and then the second one delves into the community college area and some of the more details. So thank you. All right, we'll pause one more second or 2 or 3 to see if there's any other questions or comments. While we're pausing, I do want to give a shout out to our friends up in the mountains. I know it's been a difficult time with the flooding and everything that's going on up there. So I encourage everybody to send well wishes and good thoughts and prayers that way to the people, especially Haywood County. We know they're dealing with a lot there. So keep them in your thoughts as they're dealing with the rain that's coming in today too. And so we all got to lean on each other as sister colleges. So just wanted to encourage you to do that. So thank you, everybody, for your attention today. I hope that this was a valuable meeting for everybody, and I hope you enjoy your Labor Day weekend.
Thank you.